Hello and welcome to the print. I'm in Patna, Patna's Marine Drive. Elections are going on today for the first phase of the Bihar Assembly election. A few days ago, I was in Siwan, camping there for about 3-4 days. There was a very unique story, a peculiar story that I wanted to explore from Siwan. As you know, Sivan, which went to polls today, in fact, it's being talked about a lot because the RJD, the Mahagathbandhan, has fielded Mohammad Osama from the seat. Now, Osama happens to be the son of now dead Bahubali of Sivan, Mohammad Shahabuddin. Uh, he was the quintessential Muslim, the quintessential Bahubali of Sivan. Um Now, he shot to infamy, particularly in 1997, for being accused of murder of the rising star of a communist party at the time, Chandrasekhar Prasad. Chandrasekhar, as some of you would know, was had been the JNU SU, the JNU Students Union president twice by the time, and he had come to Siwan as a leader of the CPIML, which is the Communist Party of India Marxist Leninist Liberation. Now, in 1997, in front of, in fact, Jayaprakash Narayan's Murti statue in Siwan, in the heart of Siwan, Chandrasekhar Prasad and one of his comrades was shot dead. The CPIML Liberation at the time had accused Shahabuddin for being the mastermind of Chandrasekhar's murder. A lot of protests happened. JNU students were protesting, the left parties were protesting, and they were asking that Shahabuddin should be charge sheeted and should be punished. None of this happened. He was, as I said, a quintessential Bahubali. Now, about 28 years later, you see how the politics of the region has really changed because Shahabuddin's son Osama is fighting from the RJD, from the Mahagathbandhan, and who's an ally of the RJD in the Mahagathbandhan? The CPIML Liberation, which was once a vocal opponent of the party. So we decided to explore why the CPIML particularly continues to survive in Bihar, because as some of you political observers would remember, CPIML Liberation had really sprung up a surprise in the 2020 Bihar Assembly election because of the 19 seats they contested as part of the Mahagathbandhan. They had ended up winning 12. This was a strike rate of about 60%. So a lot of pundits were talking about why the CPIML Liberation does well, continues to survive in Bihar at a time when it's almost gone from the electoral map of the country, from Bihar, from Bengal, from Tripura. So we decided to go to Bhojpur, the regions especially where the CPIML Liberation is powerful, is strong, and try to explore why it does well. And what we realized is that it was not out of nowhere that the CPIML Liberation ended up performing so well in the last assembly election. This region really has a long politics, history of left politics, of even class struggle, and for that you really need to go back in history. So a lot of people would tell you that the economic and social state of Bihar was sealed back in 1797 when the British introduced the permanent settlement in Bengal, and Bihar, as you know, was then a part of Bengal. So what this did was this created this very exploitative zamindar class, and it created this class of peasants, of agricultural workers, of rayats, and so on. So there was a clear class divide that the permanent settlement created. The zamindars typically belonged to upper castes, the Bhumihars, the Rajputs, etc. And with permanent settlement, they basically lost all incentive in actually improving agricultural produce, because all they were interested in was paying a certain amount to the British as taxes, and then usurping whatever surplus the peasants and the farmers were actually producing. So the agricultural productivity of this region started taking a hit from then. So this sort of very exploitative class come caste character got cemented back then in the 19th century. You come to the independence movement at a time in the 1920s, 30s, when the entire country was really consumed by the freedom movement. In Bihar, you see that it's already seething with this kind of a revolutionary rage. Why does that happen? That happens because of one character, especially Swami Sahajanand Saraswati. He's a Bhumihar himself, but he comes to Bihar from eastern Uttar Pradesh, and he really begins to talk about this class struggle of the peasant struggle of this region. He tries to mobilize the peasants. At first, his Kisan Sabha becomes really huge. Peasants mobilize behind him in a very big way. At first, Congress, which is obviously a dominant political force by the 1920s and 30s in Bihar as well, at first they think Swami Sahajanand can be an ally who can actually bring peasants along with him to the Congress fold and actually make them join the national movement. And this happens for a couple of decades. But slowly, the tensions start really coming to the fore. Why? Because Congress, as we know, was an organization dominated by the zamindars. They were dominated by the Bhumihars, they were dominated by the Brahmins, the Rajputs. So the Congress wanted to keep the class exploitation of farmers, of peasants. They wanted to really brush it under the carpet in the name of the national movement. The Kisan Sabha led by Swami Sahajanand did not want to do that. They wanted to talk about the class exploitation of peasants and so on. So if you see back then, in Swami Sahajanand's vocabulary, you see things like, you know, capitalists are the parasite class. He says that they are a burden, zamindars are a burden on society. And he says that there is no caste, there is only the caste of capitalists, of zamindars on the one hand, and of peasants. So you see that this kind of left vocabulary is already sort of part of Bihar's politics. Obviously, upper castes are not responding to this politics nicely. They start mobilizing lathets, their musclemen against these revolting Kisans. So what you see actually happen in the 90s, the caste wars of Bihar, its genesis really lies here, where the lathets start organizing against revolting farmers, against revolting peasants. So this, what I'm trying to say is that this class history, this history of exploitation of this left politics really dates back to then. Post-independence, what do we see? This vocabulary has become such a crucial part of Bihar's politics that in 1950, Bihar becomes the first state to abolish zamindari. But you see, obviously, the upper castes are, as I said, not responding very nicely to this politics. The clout of the zamindars is so massive here that, you know, KB Sahai, who was the finance minister in Bihar, when he went to the assembly to introduced the Zamindari Abolition Act, he was really hit by a truck, and this was done at the behest allegedly of the Maharaja of Darbhanga. That was the kind of clout that the Zamindars enjoyed, that they sort of physically attacked the finance minister for introducing this Zamindari Abolition bill. Nevertheless, Sahai went all bandaged up to the assembly, and that really was the evidence of this kind of class fault line in Bihar's politics. Post-independence, then also what happens is that this movement that Sahajanand Saraswati had created, it kind of gets divided, it kind of gets split into those who become the socialist leaders and those who become the communist leaders. We see a lot of people move to the Socialist Party, the Congress Socialist Party, of which then Karpuri Thakur, Lalu Prasad Yadav, Nitish Kumar are the later leaders of that same tradition of socialist politics in Bihar. As far as the communists are concerned, now remember, by the 60s, class exploitation is at its very peak in Bihar. No political party is talking about it. At this point, the Communist Party of India, the Communist Party of Marxists, of India Marxists, the CPI and the CPIM, become sort of lackadaisical. Now, why does this happen? One, they're not particularly agitational, they're not on the ground. But why does that happen? When I spoke to a lot of people about this, including erstwhile revolutionaries themselves, they tell you that CPI and CPIM ironically were parties that were entirely led by the upper castes. So their entire leadership itself came from Brahmins and Bhumihars. These people, as is quintessential of left parties, refuse to acknowledge caste at all. They said that class is the only thing, and a class struggle will lead to the abolition of caste as well. In Bihar, as you know, that is highly unlikely to happen. So the communist movement in by the 60s, by the 70s begins to dither in Bihar. Now at this time what happens is the late 60s, as you know, was the age of revolution across the world. A lot of students would across the world were talking about the fact that the system needs to be changed. There can't be reform, but there has to be revolution. In India, India was no exception to this politics. We see Naxalbari break out in Bengal at the same time in 1967. Now this has direct consequences for the left politics of Bihar as well. What happens is the CPIML comes to be in the whole country and in Bihar as well. As I said, till this point, nobody was really talking about the peasants, nobody was talking about the agricultural workers, nobody was talking about the caste character of the class exploitation in Bihar. The CPIML begins to organize agricultural workers and small peasants for the first time and really tell them that we don't have to change, we don't want reform here and there, we don't want electoral politics, we want direct revolution. They begin to organize people, and I actually met revolutionaries who went literally from village to village organizing agricultural workers, telling them that even if you need to improve your conditions through force, do it. And it was the CPIML then training them, it was providing them arms and so on. So the agricultural workers, peasants, for the first time begin to show signs of an armed resistance against the upper castes and the zamindars. Now, how do the upper castes, the landlords, respond to this kind of politics? Their response is prompt, their response is vicious, and it is extremely bloody. By the late 1960s itself, just when this politics of armed resistance starts, upper castes in Bihar, the landlord class in Bihar, they start really organizing this lathet tradition that they had of muscle men who guarded their zamindaris back in the day. They really start organizing them into senas. Now, these senas at first would basically murder CPIML leaders. This phase lasted until the 60s, 70s, 80s even. 90s, what you see is that a lot of these senas, now the senas are created by Bhumihars, the senas are created by Rajputs. The senas, interestingly, are also created by the intermediate castes of the Yadavs, of the Kauris, who were some sort of zamindars. So all of these start viciously attacking the revolting kisans, the revolting peasants, the agricultural workers, and so on. By the 90s, you see that this really sort of develops into actual caste wars in Bihar. By 1994, Ranveer Sena is formed, which sort of brings together a lot of these caste armies. They were basically private militias. So Ranveer Sena brings all of them together and then starts this kind of dance of retribution and violence in Bihar. So if you see 90s Bihar history, Bihar, certain regions of Bihar, the Bhojpur region that I was talking about, this entire region comes to be called the flaming fields of Bihar because there is complete there is extreme violence. These caste armies start unleashing a cycle of massacres where at once Dalits in dozens are massacred, and there's not one such incident. If you look up my story, in fact, that went on the print a few days ago, you will see the names and the intensity of these massacres that took place. How does the CPIML respond? The CPIML and the extreme left parties, actually, not the parties, then they are groups because they don't fight elections at the time, they respond by creating the Lal Sena. Now Lal Sena for the first time brings in Dalits, agricultural workers in large numbers, and they start this they respond by massacres of upper castes, of Bhumihars, and they end up killing dozens of upper castes as well. So 90s Bihar, you see that there is this direct confrontation between upper castes and Dalits who form the ranks of the Lal Sena, who constitute the Lal Sena. So in short, this is the story until 90s, and it is in these regions in Bhojpur that the CPIML continues to be strong. So it's not out of nowhere, as a lot of pundits said that CPIML has been revived here because it formed an alliance with the Mahagathbandhan. Of course, that's true, that because the CPIML, the CPI, CPIM, they're in alliance with the with the RJD, with the Congress. Their bases have been invigorated in some way. But the fact that these bases exist, that really goes back in history, and that tells you why the CPIML continues to be dominant in this region of Bihar at a time where it's facing electoral erasure almost from large parts of the country. It's also around the late 1980s when the CPIML Liberation, which is the party that's fighting elections, gets formed. They decide to go the electoral way, and I think from there you can see the genesis of the CPIML becoming very pragmatic in politics. And now what you see, the CPIML Liberation, which is headed by Dipankar Bhattacharya, obviously, you see that they are making alliances, they are making strategic alliances. That shows you the pragmatism of this party, this perhaps newfound pragmatism, that they are ready to sort of let actual very foundational issues with the RJD, with the Congress, really go on the back burner because they need to fight the BJP and the RSS at the moment. Can they sustain this kind of alliance? I actually ended up asking a lot of the CPIML leaders who I met that you're obviously not fighting to be in opposition. What if you actually win the election? Will the erstwhile issues that actually made you really not look eye to eye with the RJD Congress not show up? Their response was a bit ambiguous to that. So this is really evidence of the fact that the CPIML, although has become pragmatic to survive in electoral politics, but it is also why it remains perhaps the lone force in Bihar and in one can argue in the rest of the country as well, barring Kerala, which continues to be a force to reckon with. You can read a longer, more detailed version of this story on why the left continues to survive in Bihar on our website. Thank you so much. This is Sania Dhingra signing off with Sakib.